Here we go again, YouTube. Welcome back to another exciting episode of Yes Chef. I'm your host, Big Chef Dro, and as you can see by the title, today I'm going to show you how to do some collard greens. So I'm going to give you my tricks and my tips on how to make some of the most delicious Southern style collard greens that you've ever tasted. And believe me, it's the best. So without any further ado, folks, let's get into this. Let's get it popping. Let's cook. All right, YouTube, let's get into the process of the way that I do collard greens. Now, I have some neck bones in here. I think that there's about 4 pieces of these neck bones in here. And so I started to boil it before I actually cut the camera on, because I wanted you to see how white or milky that the water gets. And that's what I'm looking for. That's what I'm trying to achieve. So I'm going to let this cook all the way down. I had the water up to about right there. And so it's cooked down to here. So I'm going to let this cook all the way down. And I want you to see what the consistency is and how much water it is, and then what I do after it gets down to that. So once it's going to probably boil for about another hour until it gets down to where I need it to be. And so once that's done, we'll come back. I'll show you exactly what I'm talking about. Okay, so as the meat is boiling, I just want to go over my process of doing the collard greens. Now, you can go buy the full leaf collard greens and sit down and cut them and chop them up the way you like. I don't mind doing that every now and again, but it's a process and it takes a hell of a lot of time. So what I do is, for the most part, is I go buy the bags of greens, and usually they're around $4 to $5 a bag. So here I have 2 bags, and what I do is I go through the bags. After I take them out, I go through them mainly so that I can find things like this in there. This is a dragonfly that was actually in the greens. And I also want to get out, these big pieces of stem. I'm not a fan of stems at all when it comes to eating collard greens. So, I'll go through them and take that out. So we got our little friend here, and, we'll dispose of that as well as the stems as well. And so what I do is I'm going to wash those greens. I'm going to wash them in the sink and the strainer, and I'm going to wash them with baking soda. This is how my mother taught me how to wash greens as a kid. So I'm going to do that. And once I wash them, rinse them off really well, really thoroughly, then we'll come back once the meat is done, and we'll go over that. So the meat is done. And as you can see, the water has gotten a lot darker. And what has happened is a lot of that fat and a lot of the seasonings that they use to smoke this meat with, and this was smoked neck bones. So a lot of the stuff that they use to smoke it with is down in that water. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this meat out. Now, I recently started doing this because I'm just not a fan of eating collard greens and having to pick bones out of my collard greens because of the meat. Now, the smoked pigtails are the worst because those little bones can just hide in there, and you find yourself biting down on bones. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this meat out, and I'm going to let it cool off, and then I'm going to take the meat off the bone. I do like the smoked neck bones better because I don't have to deal with as many bones. So this water may have some bones in it, but I will get all of that out, like this here. So you may have to fish out some bones or either strain it into another pan to get the bones out. But this is what I do. Now, the second thing I do is this. So every good cook should have this. At least if you're from the South, you should have this in your refrigerator or somewhere on hand. And this is bacon grease. So every time I cook bacon, I always save this grease. As you can see, I've already went in. So what I do while it's still hot, I get me a little bit of that bacon grease and I just set it down in there and I let it cook. I like this bottom part with all the little pieces of burnt pieces on there. I like to get that in there as well. So I'll let that melt while the water is still hot. And you see how this water has just really reduced down so that it's nice and thick as well. So we'll come back and we'll go over the process of getting the meat out and then adding the greens as well. Okay, so my collard greens are washed. Baking soda, soaking, baking soda again, soaking, rinsing. Got to make sure that you wash your vegetables. Now, as I was washing and going through it, I still pulled out a lot of oversized stems that I don't need in there at all. So this is another batch of stems that I pulled out, carefully looking at them, washing them with the baking soda just to make sure that they're good and clean and ready to go. Okay, so I'm going to set this to the side and I'm going to bring in the meat. It has cooled down, and so, you know, with the pair of gloves on, I'm just going to take this meat off of the bone. And I mean, there is a lot of delicious meat in here, but now you got to be careful because as you're peeling it, you'll get your bones. Okay, and that's not what we want. You know, I know it's traditional to, you know, suck the bones and sit there and eat it, but listen, that's just not my thing. That's not what I do. So I'm going to go ahead and take all of this meat off of the bones, careful not to incorporate any of the bones in it. Okay, so this is all the meat that we have. This is a lot of meat, and this, you know, it's one package of neck bones. So I went through. You don't want to tear the meat up too much because you want to make sure that it's, you know, you have a lot of big chunks of meat. So here's the deal. I'm not going to put it in until after the greens cook down for a little bit because it's already cooked. I don't want it to cook to the point of being mushy. So what I'm going to do is I have the water is already cooled down. The bacon grease is melted, and I'm going to start adding my seasoning into the water. So we'll come back with that. Okay, so I have the water cooled off, as you can see, nice and creamy. Has a you know, I boiled it down to the point where it has reduced to the point where it's, I mean, it has a lot of the meat flavor. Got the bacon in there, the bacon grease in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and add my seasoning. Now, through trial and error, I figured out that it's best for me to season this water as opposed to putting it on the greens. It kind of gave it a gritty texture. And so I figured out that I should go ahead and season the water, and that will dissolve the seasoning a lot better. So I'm going to add my combination of Morton's seasonal and also accent salt. So I'm going to add that. Now, you season how you want. Okay, I have 2 bags of greens. So, you know, I wanted to have a nice seasoning. And so it may look like I'm putting a lot in here, but, you know, this is going to season 2 bags of greens. And so I put that in there, and then my pepper. Now, through trial and error again, I have learned that a lot of pepper is not good. So I don't go in heavy with the pepper. Just a little bit to give it a taste for 2 bags, okay? Then, of course, my garlic. And I do use a lot of garlic. I use a lot of garlic in a lot of things that I cook. I love the taste of garlic. I'll put a little bit more in there. The onion seasoning, I will not use as much, just a little bit. And there you go. So I take that and I mix that up. So what I found was that if I let it cool, what I used to do is I used to put the seasoning in while it was still hot, while it was, while it was cooking. And what it would do was it would clog up my holes, and it would be like lumps of seasoning on there. And I didn't like that. So I figured I would let it cool before I put the seasoning in, and it would be better for my containers, and it would also allow me the ability to allow it to dissolve and to incorporate with the water. Okay. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it back on. I'm going to allow it to boil, and I'm going to put the greens in after it starts to boil. And greens are going to make their own water, of course, like cabbage or, a lot of vegetables, they make their own water. Now, I may have enough in here, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to have some water on the side in case I have to add more water to it in order for it to cook properly. So I'm going to get this to boiling, and then I'll start adding the greens in, and I'll show you that process as well. Okay, so we're back. The water is boiling, nicely seasoned. A lot of the seasoning have dissolved into the water so that we can get the greens off in here. So I'll just add them. Just add the greens. And I'm using a nice big pot so I can go ahead and add them all. And you want to kind of start stirring to get all that seasoning into your greens, get that water incorporated. And again, this is going to make its own water as well. And so we will watch this as it cooks down. Now, as this cooks down, and I see that it needs more water, I will add more water as needed. But from the looks of it, it looks like it should be okay for now. But always have some water available to add to it, because of course they're going to cook with water. And I'll just go ahead and just add about 2 cups to it. And this is going to cook for about 30 to 45 minutes. And at that point, I'll check to see if it's ready to be turned off. I'm going to let it cook halfway through, And once it's almost ready, I'll go ahead and add the meat to it so not to overcook the meat. So we'll let this cook down for about 30 to 40 minutes, and then we'll see where we're at after that. Once we're at the 30 to 45 minutes part, I will go ahead and add the meat to it, and then we'll be back for that. Okay. All right. So it's been 30 minutes. The greens are looking good. Just a little side note, I did have to add the full 4 cups of water in there just to make sure that the greens were cooking properly. So it's to a point now where it's almost done. And so therefore, I'm going to go ahead and add the meat to it at this time. And I'm not going to stir it too hard. I don't want the meat to break up too much, but I do need it in here to make everything come together. Okay. At this point, I'll go ahead and just take a little taste to make sure everything is coming together pretty good. All right. A little bit of that meat as well. Look at that. Now, you don't want to overcook your greens. You really don't. You want them to have a little bite to it. You don't want it to be mushy. Wow. I'm just going to go ahead and make an executive decision. And I'm going to say these bad boys are ready. So what I would do, man, this is absolutely phenomenal. So what I'm going to do is I'll go ahead and turn it off. I'll put the top on it and I'll just let it sit in these juices like this. Man, that is really, really good. So there you have it, folks. I mean, this is this is it, man. This is how I do my greens. It's ready to go. Taking the meat off the bone so you don't, I mean, if you like to, my mother, I did this for my mother a few weeks ago. And I was like, yeah, Mom, I'm going to go ahead and take the meat off the bones. And I had some pigtails, some smoked pigtails in there. And she was like, oh, that's so cute. Save me a couple of them tails because I like to suck on the bones. So if that's your thing, do it the way you want to do it. But I just feel like it's a better product when you take the meat off the bones, and it's just more enjoyable this way. This is the finished product. And I just want to thank you for tuning in. If this is your first time tuning in to Yes Chef, I want to thank you for watching. If you enjoy what you have just seen, if you enjoyed this video, please go ahead and hit the like button. And don't forget to smash the subscribe button so you can stay in tune with all the videos that I put out. Hit the notification button, and every time I put a video out, it's going to let you know so you can immediately tune in. We're going to continue to bring the flavor. We're going to continue bringing forth great content on this channel. And this is for the family, so it won't be a taste testing. We're going to go ahead and dive right into this as a family and enjoy these collard greens. So until the next time, until the very next video, I want to thank you for watching. And as always, peace.